Am I the only person who does not find depression a depressing topic of conversation? I actually find it quite uplifting to talk about depression. And that's because, I remember my father once met a surgeon at a cocktail party or something like this. And my father asked him, well, what do you do? What do you specialize in? And he said, cancer. My father, being a shallow and rather stupid person, said, oh, well, that's depressing. And the doctor said back, no, it's not. I get to save people's lives every day. I get to change people's lives for the better every day. Of course, it's not depressing. And the doctor said words to the effect that idiots always tell him it's depressing. And it's like, no, it's not. There are all kinds of areas of medicine that are really depressing. And doing surgery on cancer is not one of them. He gets to see people make progress, make people improve every day. I got to say the same thing to you right now about depression. All right. I don't find it depressing because I actually think people can change. And I think people's lives are improved just by having the conversation, just by learning to look at these things and think about these things analytically. Right. So like the surgery that's involved, we're doing it right now. All right. In as much as there is a cure, this is it. Okay. Now, we have a funny situation right now. This is September 16th, 2021. Two different fans of the channel wrote in to tell me that they saw Vegan Gains, did watch my videos and did make a reply. Unfortunately, he didn't actually watch them from beginning to end. He didn't actually listen to them. In the old days, we'd say he fast forwarded, but it's not really fast forwarding. He kind of clicked around with his mouse. So he didn't actually get the argument of the video and he didn't have the patience to hear it. And nevertheless, the message got through to him on some level that there are some people who are willing to criticize the choices he's making and the rationale he's presenting in terms of depression and the presumed, cure for depression. Now, the single most striking and stupid aspect of the case Vegan Gains is now making is how closely parallel it is to the excuses for eating meat offered by many of his fellow vegans who became ex-vegans. How similar it is to the argument offered right now by someone like John Venus. Notice to say most of this video is not going to be a critique of Vegan Gains. It's not going to be dealing with what I'm dealing right now, the criticism of his argument. Most of it's going to be a positive discussion of what depression is and what to do about it, so on and so forth. But, what Richard says in shoring up his defense of taking antidepressants is that he just felt bad. He just felt so bad. He knew there was something wrong. And he felt he tried everything to cure it. He felt he tried everything. Now, we're going to come back to this. Of course, there are a lot of things he didn't try. He felt he'd done everything he could. So then he turned to antidepressants as the only thing that could help him. And then what do you know? Based on equally certain a sense of feeling, he felt that this drug helped him. Now, in his live stream responding to this, he indicates that he has seen some of the research about the fact that really these antidepressants have no positive effect or an incredibly trivial positive effect, or that the positive effect can be completely attributed to the placebo effect. The drugs, in this sense, don't work. They don't work in the same way that aspirin works. They don't work in the same way that the treatment for diabetes works, in terms of actually managing your insulin levels and thus managing diabetes. It's not a cure for diabetes, but, it treats the symptoms. That he is aware on some level and to some extent that this is bullshit in plain English, right? But he comes back to the same defense of his choices that John Venus himself relies on, right? The narrative is his own desperation, his certainty that there's something biologically wrong with him, that he has a medically real problem with no evidence based on subjective feeling, and then his certainty that the cure works, again, based on the same kind of subjective feeling. Well, Richard, you're in good company. And coincidentally, you've been criticizing John Venus at exactly the same time. So if you don't know who John Venus is, he is a bodybuilder, 31 years old now, I believe. And for some mysterious reason, after years of bodybuilding and pushing his physical frame to its limits, day after day, week after week, he started having joint pain. What a surprise. That was like, what percentage of people who go into bodybuilding suffer from joint pain? Do you guys know any ballet dancers? People in the ballet who complain about trip? There were a lot of lines of work. Do you guys know anyone doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu? Has ankle problems and knee problems. There are some sports where certain chronic conditions are incredibly common because of the nature of the strain you're putting in the body. Some people can cope with it, some can't. Okay, so he's a bodybuilder who has joint pain, and he reasons it through in precisely the same way that Richard reasons through his depression. I tried everything. So he claims he tried everything. Well, he didn't try quitting bodybuilding. I'm just saying, if you know someone, I've known a couple people like this, people who were in things like ballet and modern dance, and they have chronic pain conditions, and what the doctor tells them is, yeah, you can stop doing ballet or you can stop doing modern dance. Guess what? You've in some cases specifically, you've worn away the cartilage in these joints or something. You've done some damage, and guess what? Basically, if you continue doing this, you're going to continue getting this kind of chronic pain. So, he convinces himself, and, by the way, in John Venus's case, we don't know to what extent it's psychosomatic. We don't know to what extent it's stress-related. He has other problems in his life. He used to be wealthy. Now he's poor. He used to be famous. Now he's a nobody. He now has 2 kids. He's responsible for raising 2 kids. He's moved back into his parents' house. He's sleeping on their floor. To what extent it's perception versus reality? We already have a question. But even if we take it that this is a physically real pain in his joints with a very obvious cause, and that when he does take a break, when he stops lifting weights, mysteriously, the pain disappears. He has the same rationale vegan Gaines has. He started eating meat, dairy, eggs. He started eating non-vegan food, and then he feels so much better. All right, now we've heard this. If you follow veganism, we've heard all kinds of vegans claim that eating meat solve their sleeping problems, solve their sexual problems, solve their stress disorder, solve all kinds of self-evidently mental aberrations, like things that are only subjectively real, problems that are ultimately attitudinal, not biological or physical. And they feel completely certain that eating meat cured their depression, Richard, in the same way you feel certain that taking this pill cured their depression. And you know what? When you sit down and talk to them about it, and for some of you, you'll never have this experience. I have had this experience with ex-vegans. So I'll just say I knew an ex-vegan. I could say who this is. It doesn't really need to be private. But I knew an ex-vegan who had studied nutritional science. And back when she promoted veganism, she did talk about it in a very kind of scientific way in terms of exactly what's in that. He said, okay, so tell me something. On a molecule by molecule level, what is the nutrition? What is the substance that you believe you're getting from meat and eggs now that you were not getting before from a combination of broccoli and beans and potatoes, all the stuff that was in your vegan diet? And, in my experience talking to these people, some of them are just completely insane, but, in my experience talking to these people, they will admit to you that there was nothing absent from their diet as a vegan that's now present in meat and eggs. They will admit to you it doesn't make sense. They can't provide a mechanistic, scientifically valid explanation for why their joint pain was cured or why their psychological pain was cured or why their digestive problems were cured. And again, to what extent these things are psychological realities versus biological realities. Why was their sex life suddenly got better? Like, seriously, we had no joke claims about this, claims about getting an erection, women having orgasms. Suddenly your sex life gets better because you started eating meat, dairy, and eggs. Yeah, well, that could be psychosomatic. That could be more a problem with your attitude. It could be a lot of things rather than an actual biological reality of a nutritional deficiency. And then conversely, of course, if it were a real nutritional deficiency, if, for example, you have a zinc deficient diet, you can have a diet that's too low in zinc, whether it's vegan or non-vegan. But like if you actually have a deficiency, you can cure it within veganism. Like, oh, well, your problem is you're not getting enough zinc. Then you start getting more zinc. So you cannot get John Venus to reason through for you in a cause and effect way that his joint pain is caused by something absent in his diet as a vegan that is now being supplied, that's present in his diet as a meat eater. And that guy, he's not an expert, but he's done enough research. He knows what a nutritionally adequate vegan diet is. There's no way he can think it through. There's no way he can reason through for you. Like, even if you want to believe him, you say to him, look, you have made a scientific discovery. You have figured out that the cure for joint pain is eating the flesh of a dead cow. So this is a major breakthrough, all right? Now in the world, how many millions of people eat beef every day and have joint pain? How many bodybuilders eat beef and have chronic joint pain? Well, John Venus, you have discovered something miraculous about the cause of joint pain and the cure for it that has never been known before. And we are sincerely trying to figure out what it is. So I want you to walk me through this. Let's figure out exactly what your diet was deficient in before. And let's figure out what is the molecule, what is the chemical, the unique thing that is found in the flesh of a dead cow that you can't get in a vegan diet. And then we could do an experiment. Once you figure out what it is, like let's say it's something like zinc. It's like, oh, well, okay, so you were zinc deficient. Now let's try giving you a vegan diet that's rich in zinc and see if that could, like, if it were something that could be specified or iterated, right? It would be in this sense falsifiable. You'd be able to make scientific progress thinking about it scientifically. Okay. Now look, again, I want to talk about this in a kind of a more profound way. All right. I have no evidence at my end, just watching Richard's videos. I have no evidence that his life has changed for the better since he started taking this pill. I have none. I have no reason to think that from an objective, detached perspective, he is less depressed now or more happy, that he's improved in any way psychologically compared to what he was before. All right. But he claims it. He claims it. So we can challenge him in the same way and say, okay, Richard, why don't you reason this through with me? Okay. Why don't you explain to me how scientifically this could make sense? And we know his whole psychological history in as much as he's presented it on YouTube. Okay. So you are someone who suffered from brain injury. You had CTE, right? You had serious concussion and brain injury as a young man. You're someone who's reported struggling with hallucinations, right? Your whole life, visual and auditory hallucinations. You're also someone who has believed in one miracle cure after another, thinking that it would cure your hallucinations, cure your depression, right? That suddenly you had been cured. Okay. In the past, you attributed that to the vegan diet, that veganism had solved your mental problems, that formerly you'd been crazy and now you're not crazy thanks to veganism. And then that didn't last, right? You were optimistic that veganism had changed your life for the, and guess what? It didn't work. Okay. You had the same pattern played out again with taking quote unquote magic mushrooms, hallucinogenic mushrooms. You thought you'd made this huge breakthrough. You changed your attitude, you changed your outlook, you'd cured your psychological problems, including depression and a certain kind of misanthropy that you used to call being a sociopath or being a psychopath. You thought you had been cured when you take these mushrooms. You have a pattern of doing this again and again and again. And now you're taking a prescription antidepressant and you are attributing to it a miraculous transformation that is no more scientifically believable than John Venus claiming that he's cured his joint pain through eating meat. Okay, it's not. We can't put together the etiology here. There is no plausible etiology. And you know what? There is another plausible explanation, Richard. And the plausible explanation is that there is no cure for what's wrong with you. You are the same man now that you were before you became vegan. Then you thought veganism had miraculously transformed you. You're the same man now that you were before you took hallucinogenic mushrooms. You're the same guy struggling with the same problems. And there have been different times in your life when what changed was your attitude, was when you got more motivated or less motivated, when you were more or less self-pitying. What changed were your feelings. Okay. And your feelings matter. Okay. I'm not saying that to dismiss or denigrate them. There are people who, when they were vegan, had a terrible sex life. They had trouble sleeping. They had trouble with their digestion. Okay. And then they switched to eating a diet that includes meat and eggs. And all of these problems are miraculously solved. That's real. Okay. That's real. That's their real experience, Richard. And you would be the first person to attack them and shut them down and denigrate them and dismiss their excuses. Okay. It's not hard for me to understand sympathetically and analytically how someone's whole life could get better coinciding with quitting the vegan movement, walking away from the vegan movement. You know what? One of the reasons why your sex life might have got better is because you're having sex with other people. Now that you're having sex with people who, eat meat and drink alcohol and stuff, whereas before you were with a puritanical bunch of, like, there are a lot of things I can relate to there. And I can understand why your digestion got better because you stopped eating beans from Mexican restaurants. Like there are all kinds of facts and factors in that I can sympathize with. I can understand why that's subjectively real for people who quit veganism and go back to eating meat, but it's not scientifically real. All right. That's just your subjective experience. That's just in the realm of your feelings. And at the end of the day, we all have to make tough decisions about what is the right thing to do. All right, I'm happy to reply to your questions, people in the audience. Oh, sorry, Melissa, you want to talk? We're just going to say we have 24 people in the audience. If we can get 24 thumbs up, it'll help more people join the conversation. If other people have intelligent things to say, obviously, I really only want to talk about things that are on topic. So if you don't ask me about Buddhist philosophy, unless it's relevant. Sometimes I get totally wrong, but if you guys want to say something on topic and that's on my level, I'm happy to have you guys participate. And again, if you guys hit the thumbs up, it'll help more people participate as the live stream is still on. Go on, Melissa.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that Vegan Gains says that he has tried everything, including positive thinking. And I just want to point out how that is different than what you're talking about,
yes,
which is attitudinal difference. Another way to say it is also your temperament, your temper, how you think. It's not necessarily just thinking positively. And I want to, get more of your perspective on that.
Okay, I have a lot. That's what this video is all about.
Okay.
Okay, right. So look, one of Richard's problems, and for many of you, the audience, this is going to be a problem. And for Melissa, before she fell in love with me, it was a problem for her too, is that you don't have people who love you and who can provide a detached analytical perspective on your life. So, I could give all kinds of examples of this from this relationship. You don't have someone in your life who knows you and loves you and cares about you, but is actually detached enough to tell you when you're wrong, tell you when you're not good at something. Like you're not talented at this. This is not something you're great. Tell it and really inform, the decisions that you're making. Don't get me wrong. There's certainly a role for positive encouragement in life, but you can have a little bit too much encouragement. There's sometimes where you need someone to discourage you in life and really, ask you tough questions. Okay. You ever had a friend who was Muslim? And this friend of yours who's Muslim says the same things Richard is saying. So if you guys haven't heard his live stream, most of you can probably just imagine this because you know his character. They say to you that they're depressed and they don't know why, and they've tried everything. So they're going to start using this drug. They say the same thing Richard's been saying. They say, oh, well, my life is so wonderful. And they tell you the things they do. They pray 5 times a day. They have a great life. They have a really good relationship with their temple, with the ulama, with the religious community at their temple. And they get along well with their parents, and they earn money at their job and stuff. And they keep insisting to you that they have a totally happy life and they've tried everything. And there's just no reason for them to be unhappy. They can't understand why they're depressed. So therefore, they have to turn to this mind-altering drug to solve their problem that therefore must be biologically real. Now, I've already hinted at this, but let's just make it really clear, okay? That is just as fallacious an inference as John Venus assuming that his joint pain is caused by the lack of meat in his diet. Okay, I'm willing to assume it's real. Like it could be psychosomatic. It could be that he just has joint pain for psychological reasons. I mentioned a bunch of stress stuff. But if he is feeling joint pain, like, oh, well, I notice you bench press 300 pounds. Like, well, bench pressing 300 pounds could cause joint pain. And you know what? A lot of bodybuilders go through this. Back when you were 21, you could bench press 300 pounds and not have joint pain. And now you're 31, fucko. Welcome to my world. You know what I mean? It's not. I'm in my 40s now. I know the difference. I know what it's like to lift weights at 21, at 31, at 41. It's not the same. And now you go jump. Okay, you are making a leap of inference in saying, "I've got this joint pain. I've tried everything. I've tried everything. Therefore, it must be a biologically real condition, and therefore." There's this cause and effect relationship. In John Venus's case, it's because he doesn't have meat in his diet because he has a vegan diet, and now he's going to fill that in, right? Vegan Gains is going through the same sequence of fallacious steps in his reasoning, right? And it's very telling. He believes in it. He believes in every step. He doesn't question it. He doesn't have any ironical detachment about it, okay? Now, I am actually thinking of a particular Muslim guy I knew when I give this example. And you may not have had this experience with a friend, but you may have had a friend, and you can never really know. You can never be certain. But it's like, dude, I've known you for about a year now, and I'm pretty sure that you're gay. That's the feeling I have about you. And when we talk about women or your sex life, or when I see the way you look at pictures in a magazine, the way you look at pictures of men versus pictures of women as you're flipping through the magazine, like whatever. When I'm around you, partly it's mannerisms, partly it's behavior, partly it's specific conversations. If you haven't actually had sex with someone yourself, you don't really know if they're straight or gay. And by the way, even then, a lot of people are surprised. You can be married to someone and find out later that they're gay when you thought they were straight. I've known people who've been through that. I've known people who've been there. But you know what? You might have a friend, and from your detached perspective, you can say, look, dude, my perspective on you is that you're gay, that you're a repressed homosexual, and you're never really going to be happy. Like, the reason why you're depressed is that you're trying to live as a heterosexual person, and it's making you miserable. And no matter how much you tell me you have a great job, a great relation with your family, and that you love your religion, and your religion is the most positive thing in your life, I'm telling you from my detached outside perspective that actually your religion is the reason you're depressed, that you are not going to be happy unless you challenge and overturn this religion and put it out of your life, you know. And that may be the most obvious thing in the world from my perspective, from the outside looking in, right? And he will not see it that way at all. He is saying, I've tried everything. Did you try converting to Buddhism? Did you try rejecting Islam and joining a different religion? By the way, I'm also a critic of Buddhism. There's a lot wrong with Buddhism, but you can imagine what a transformation that would be in someone's life, right? To go from one religion to another totally different religion in that way, you know, and you know, to go from a religion that requires you to live in celibacy until marriage to a religion that allows you a lot of scope for sexual freedom. You know, that's a big difference. A religion that's homophobic to a religion that's basically homo encouraging or homo embracing or whatever. It's kind of pro-gay. You know, go on vacation in Thailand and you'll see what I'm talking about. Thailand is a Theravada Buddhist country, in case you know. These are big changes that they aren't even considering. To them, it's unthinkable. To them, it's in the range of the impossible, right? And to me, it's the most obvious thing in the world. You say you've tried everything. And from my perspective, you ain't tried jack shit. You haven't even taken the first step. You're not even asking the first questions about why it is that you're quote unquote depressed. We have a problem as human beings. This is one of the oldest problems in philosophy. Naturally, when thinking, we gather ideas into categories. You can say we gather experiences into ideas, and then we gather ideas into categories. And we start to regard the categories as more real than the things they describe. And they're not. The category is just a way of thinking. It's just like a shorthand. It's just like a nickname to gather a bunch of different things together, right? Depression is not real. I can prove it to you just using these 3 examples, okay? Vegan Gaines can say that he's depressed. John Venus can say that he's depressed. This Muslim guy who's a repressed homosexual and is really piously he's studying the philosophy of Islam and everything too. He's not just a passive Muslim. He's really deeply involved in the religion. Okay. He can say he's depressed. All right. These are different examples gathered into one category. They do not have the same medically real condition. And there is absolutely no way that all 3 of them can cure or treat this so-called condition by taking the same pill. John Venus moved back into his parents' house. He's sleeping on the floor. He has 2 kids and he has a wife. His wife doesn't work. His wife doesn't have a job. He used to be famous. Now he's a nobody. He used to be rich. He used to have a lot of money coming in. Maybe rich is an exaggeration, whatever. He was earning good. He used to be part of an ecological and political movement called veganism that was so meaningful to him and so rewarding. Right? And he probably had people sending him messages on Instagram every day saying that he's beautiful and he's an inspiration and he's saving the planet. And also probably getting messages from people who wanted to have sex with him. Probably. Just a wild speculation on my part. Maybe everyone respected his marriage and nobody tried to have sex with him. I don't know. Okay. And now people regard him as a crank. People regard him as crazy and stupid. You know, they know what he has to say about space aliens and spirituality and stuff, right? They regard him as a loser, and he's not vegan anymore, and he's still handsome, right? Okay. Why do you think he's depressed? What do you like? He's got everything. He's got what do you mean? You know, he's tried everything. Oh, it must be the meat in his diet. It must be, it must be vegan. It must be the diet, right? It can't be the kid. Of course, there's dude, it's your life and your attitude towards it. Your problems, including the ones that you have never perceived as problems yourself. The vast majority of Muslim people have never looked at their own religion and thought it was a problem. They may think it's the most wonderful thing in their lives. Christian people, Jewish people, many religions like this. They say, what do you mean? Going to church every Sunday, that's the best thing in my calendar. It's so uplifting. It's so wonderful. And to say to that person, no, that's why you're depressed. You're depressed because you're a fucking cult member. And this is ridiculous. And the stuff you believed in when you were like 6 years old, you can't believe in anymore. And you're repressing that. Like you don't want to admit to yourself that you don't believe in Santa Claus anymore. And it's tearing you apart. You know what I mean? Now, look, sorry. I mean, there are a lot of examples. So I knew, okay, I'll anonymize this. I knew a woman who was religious as a child and a teenager. And now she's not. Now she's an atheist. And guess what? All the decisions she made that shaped the rest of her life were made back when she was a teenager, right? Where she went to school, what she majored in, what his career was, what her career was, who she got married to, who she had kids with. Now she's stuck with those consequences for the rest of her life. And she bitterly hates her own parents for having put her in this position. And she bitterly came to hate her own husband. And she's to some extent has talked about bitterly hating her own kids because she didn't want this life. She figured out too late, this isn't who she is. This isn't what she wants to do. She quit the religion. She had to force her husband to quit the religion. She basically divorced him and said, look, if you want to get back together with me, you have to change your whole life. You have to quit the religion and everything else too. And there are other things she can't change. She can't go back to college. She can't go back to university. She can't start a new career, right? Okay. Oh, wow. That sounds like depression. That sounds like an example that fits into this category. And now my way of perceiving the world is that categories are more real than the things they describe, than the things they group together. So, I know just the cure for you. Oh, yeah. Gee, that's too bad. Grew up in a religion and you can't believe in that religion anymore. And now you're stuck with this husband and these kids and this career path you didn't want. You really want to do something totally different in your career and you can't. Take this pill. It worked for Richard. It worked for vegan gains. Therefore, it must have a cause and effect efficacy that's going to cure all these other people's problems. Doesn't matter. Oh, you're homosexual. Oh, you hate your wife. Like whatever your situation. Oh no, the problem isn't you. The problem isn't your attitude. The problem isn't what are you going to do about it. The problem isn't that you need to get out and solve your problems. The problem isn't your life. Oh, no. You've already tried everything else. Remember how crucial that is to Richard's reasoning here. He had tried everything else, just like John Venus, right? He tried everything else. His life is wonderful. Just like the person who's still going to church or still going to the mosque in Islam, the true believer. Oh, my life is wonderful. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing I could change. There's nothing I could do differently. All right. And for a detached outside perspective, like if you know this guy, the particular guy I'm thinking of, like it would be the most shocking thing in the world to say to him, well, you could quit your religion and start sucking dick. right? It's the other thing about an outside perspective, right? Maybe you're wrong, right? Like maybe I think this guy is gay, and maybe he goes and tries it, and he's like, whoa, it turns out he's just a really effeminate straight guy. You know what I mean? Like that exists. Like my perspective, my advice may be wrong. You know what I mean? Right? He doesn't perceive his religion as a problem. It's built into the presuppositions of his life in a way where he's never going to challenge it. He's never going to question it. John Venus doesn't question the real cause of his joint pain, right? He doesn't question really all the sources of his psychological anguish and suffering and misery in his life. We could go on about the psychology of John Venus at great length, right? So there are two fallacious steps there. One is, I've tried everything, nothing worked. Untrue. And then the second step is, therefore, I have a biologically real condition called depression. Okay. So guys, I'm self-critical. I've been through things in my life. 35 people. You've been here for half an hour and you haven't hit the thumbs up button. What the hell's the matter with you? Come on, hit the thumbs up button. More people can join us and join this conversation. You know, I'm divorced. I used to be married to someone where I could totally say I was depressed because of the woman I was married to. I was really married to the wrong person, and it was horrible. And she made my life hell every day. Okay? Now, I don't like to use 21st century watchwords, and I don't like to make allegations against my ex-wife. And I think that that's clear enough, frankly. Okay? Waking up in the same apartment with that woman and sleeping in the same apartment with that woman was absolutely terrible. And for me, worked for her. Great relationship for her, not for me. All right. And, you know, if I had gone to a psychiatrist at that time, of course they'd give me antidepressants. They'd give me anything I asked for. Right? If you go and you talk about how unhappy you are and how everything's unraveled in your life and, you know, you can't do anything you want anymore and how miserable you are with your relationship, of course. And, you know, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that those antidepressants, they will not even make you as happy as cigarettes, alcohol, cocaine. You know, there are drugs you can take. You know, I hear drugs like, you know, the drugs they give for attention deficit disorder. Those kind of, steroids, also taking testosterone. You know, people say that if you start doing these steroids, you know, to get this big boost in energy, you can shoot someone up with performance enhancing drugs. Guess what? You still got a bad marriage. You know what I mean? You're still unhappy in your marriage. And you can say you've tried everything. Well, you didn't try getting divorced. Like, you know, sorry. You know what I mean? What if you can never be happy in this marriage? And you can list off the reasons or not. You know what I mean? It really doesn't matter. Now, just tell me something. Is this rare when I'm talking about to you? Whatever country you're living in, you can look up the divorce rate. It's probably more than 50%. A few countries in the world, it's down at 40% or 30%. Pretty much 60% is more likely. Do you think it's really unusual to be so unhappy with your marriage that you're depressed? Like, really? For the man or the woman? Sometimes both. Sometimes both people are miserable because it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon at all. Okay, you know, I'm just saying this to talk about some problems in my life. And I want to say this also because I said before, most people don't have someone who loves them and cares about them, but can provide a detached outside perspective, right? And then beyond that, even if you do have that person, they can be wrong. Someone might think you're gay and you're not gay. Like, well, the reason why you're unhappy is that you're a repressed homosexual, and they're mistaken. That could be right, but they could be mistaken. That might be their perspective on it. I think everyone who knew us as a couple back when I was married, me and my ex-wife, they thought we were this tremendously inspiring couple. We were both very hardworking intellectuals, and that's how they saw us. They thought this was this amazing relationship between two amazing people in terms of what we were doing with our lives. And they're right. I'm like, there's a sense in which that's a correct outsider's perspective. And anyone at that time, they might have said that my marriage was the best thing in my life, or they might have presumed that I don't know if they said it to my face or said, well, there's things you don't know. You don't know what it was like for me to be married to her. What my life was like waking up in that apartment every day and how she treated me. And, obviously for me now looking back, I could say I should have gotten out of that marriage, much earlier. The point is this: whatever is wrong with that marriage cannot be cured by taking this pill. Okay. Whatever is wrong with John Venus's wrists and elbows and neck, you complain about neck pain, cannot be cured by eating steak, by eating dead cow flesh. It can't be. There's no plausible mechanism there, right? And when you gather together this diverse category of human experiences of misery, the things that make us unhappy, the things that make us depressed, right? They don't belong in one category together, even in the same way that many different bodybuilders experiencing joint pain belong in one category together. We're talking about completely different people with completely different experiences and completely different perspectives on it. So really quick, some of you guys, so again, hit the thumbs up, you stingy bastards. If you change your mind later and you think it's a bad video, you can undo the thumbs up, okay? You can unclick thumbs up, or you can change the thumbs down. But come on, we need more thumbs up in here so more people can join this. Conversation. So look, guys, I've studied many different languages in my life. Okay. And studying a language, especially a really hard language like Chinese or Japanese, you need to have a ton of positive motivation. All right. It would have been easy for someone who met me when I was studying Chinese. And I think actually several professors who saw me at that time, I had this kind of conversation with them. I don't remember talking to students, like my fellow students this way. Someone could perceive me studying Chinese and say, wow, this is so wonderful for you. You must be so happy. This is like the greatest positive opportunity of your lifetime. And I see you're working so hard at Chinese, and this must be so rewarding for you. You must be so happy about it. And I would be able to say back, no, this is unbelievably depressing. Like this is like a really dark period in my life. Now, this person, again, viewing it from the outside, they could say, oh, well, the person sitting in the desk next to you, they're doing the same work on Chinese. And maybe they're just totally happy. I'm learning how to write Chinese. You're doing the same work in the same book and the same class. And you're telling me that for you, it's depressing. But for the person sitting next to you, it's a happy or uplifting or wonderful thing. Why is that? Now, some people will go through the same thought process Richard goes through, vegan gains go through. Like, oh, well, it must be that there's something biologically wrong with you. You have because you have nothing to be sad about. You have a wonderful apartment. You're enrolled in a new university degree. You're studying this language. This is so rewarding, and you're good at it. You're like the smartest kid in the class. Not really a kid because I was in my 30s at the time. But like, okay, everyone thinks you're a genius. You're really good at this. This must be so wonderful for you. And if you don't feel happy with your quote unquote objectively good life, right? Also, I just had enough money for food and everything. I wasn't starving. I had a YouTube channel, a lot of positive things going on. I'm like, well, then it must be you have to take this pill. The same pill that works for people who've gone through divorce or some totally different reason. The same pill that's given to people who are grossly overweight, the same pill that's given to people who are grossly underweight. Some people are unhappy and starve themselves. Some people get unhappy and overeat. Doesn't matter. Same pill. Same pill for all experiences of human misery. Okay, well, guess what, homeboy? We could now sit here and have a 1-hour conversation about exactly why it was so depressing to be studying Chinese at that time of my life. Guess what? It's not what I wanted to be doing with my life. I was really cornered into it, right? And there were problems with the university and the particular university professors and the struggle. There was a lot wrong in this situation. There were a lot of reasons for me to be anxious and worried about the future and unhappy, and for me to resent and regret studying Chinese. Anyway, now look, the particular professor went crazy, professor teaching Chinese, and I had to drop Chinese. I had to stop taking her class. Then I started studying Japanese. Okay. Again, the person sitting next to me, I remember one guy who was very happy in that class. He was an idiot. incredibly stupid guy who was studying, I like Japanese cartoons. I like Japanese comic books. This is great. I always wanted to study Japanese. Here I am studying Japanese. There are people who are complete fucking idiots who are totally happy in that class studying Japanese, okay? Of course I'm miserable. Of course I'm depressed. This is an incredibly dark, difficult time in my life. And the reason is not a biologically real difference between me and the student sitting in the desk next to me, right? It's a difference in attitude. It's a difference in my appreciation and interpretation of the situation. And it's real. I can't just adopt his attitude. So I can't, I don't know how old I was then. Let's say I was 35, whatever I was, 35, 38. As a 38-year-old man who has a divorce and a child and has specific career goals and who moved here and enrolled in this university to study one language, and I have a background. I used to study Cambodian and Laotian. These are my concerns. This is what I'm trying to do. I cannot adopt the attitude of an idiot who is an engineering major, right? He's doing electrical engineering and he's going to get himself a job working in a calculator factory in Japan. It was something like that. He was going to work in an electronics factory in Japan, and he's just so happy. He studies electrical engineering, and this is like the most intellectually stimulating thing in his life because the other stuff he studies is so boring. This is great, studying Japanese. Well, it's not great for me. All right, it's for me, it's part of the greatest tragedy of my adult life. Like, I'm in a situation at this same university, and you can't find the explanation by looking at the desk or looking at the textbook or even just in a simple sense looking at the professor. Maybe the professor's that bad. Maybe you walk into the classroom, take one look at the professor teaching this class, like, I understand why you're depressed. Oh, you got to sit at that desk with that book and that professor. I understand why you're depressed. Maybe it's that obvious. But my point is, a detached outsider may not be able to see why your situation is depressing for you. All right. And this gets back to the root of the self-perceived problem and the self-perceived cure for the situation that Vegan Gains is in. He says in defending his drug habit again and again that he's so happy that he can earn a living just by playing video games. Okay, Richard, do you think I would be happy with that life? Do you think I would be happy if we traded places and I was living in your apartment with your video game system and your wife? I would want to kill myself. I would rather die than live the life that you claim makes you happy. And the reality is, within that same classroom, whether it's two people sitting at two different desks studying Japanese, right? Or you can have two different people who are studying to be a dentist. And one of them is really happy. They really want to be a dentist. And the person at the desk sitting next to them is like, oh, I was forced into this by my parents. Really, they wanted to be a stand-up comedian. Really, they wanted to be an artist or something. And they're being forced to study dentistry. They're doing the same work. And in some sense, they even have the same motivation. Like, they have to be motivated enough to study and get the results or something. You know what I mean? And guess what? For one of them, it's incredibly depressing, right? And for one of them, they're completely happy. They could be living the same life in the same apartment. They could be sleeping with the same woman too. Two different people studying dentistry in a swinging polyamorous three-way relationship. You know what I mean? You could make their lives strictly comparable in so many different ways. And what one of them experiences as pleasure, the other experiences as pain. What one of them experiences as tremendously uplifting and positive, the other, the other is driven to the depths of despair by. Great to have 50 people in the audience. And now I'm going to turn and read your comments. Comment if you want to. And again, if you have a moment, hit the thumbs up button. It'll help more people join our audience and they can participate to whatever extent in this conversation. Great comment from Alatera. Make more videos about language learning. It's very unlikely. It's a lot of work. And unfortunately, I just don't have a big enough audience for it. but we'll see. I talked about that a couple days ago with my girlfriend, Melissa. We could get into certain kinds of low effort things. So we could live stream ourselves practicing the language or studying the language. We could make updates talking about new words I learned this week. We could do some kinds of language learning videos. But if you don't have a large enough audience or you're not making enough money, it's just to work alone. I don't have a fluent Chinese speaker with me or something. It's a lot of work for very, very little reward. And also, by the way, I get a lot of fan mail. I could actually read that fan mail to you guys because it's quite interesting in relation to the title, the subject of this video. Obviously, it's not the biggest impact I have on people's lives. The impact we're going to have right now with this conversation, with talking about depression and motivation and how to live a life, that's the biggest impact I make. And then, of course, talking about politics, history, life of the mind, all that stuff too. Oh yeah, ethics. We talk about ethics sometimes. Talk about being a good person sometimes. It's part of this conversation too. Yeah. So Ron Sims, longtime viewer of the channel, says, quote, I was on antidepressants on and off for a few years. After going to a therapist that was anti-farm, anti-drug, and keeping it real with him. So after he met this therapist, he realized that he was the cause of his own unhappy life, and he flushed him down the toilet. So Ron, I'm going to say this both ways, though, right? This isn't monovalent. It's ambivalent or bivalent. It goes both ways. There are people who don't take responsibility for the extent to which they're making themselves miserable. And again, they may not even perceive it. They don't perceive Islam as the problem in their life. They may think Islam is the greatest thing in their life. They don't perceive Christianity as the problem in their life. They may perceive the greatest thing in their life. They don't perceive heterosexuality as the problem in their life. They think, oh, it's great. I got married to this good Christian girl and we have sex once a month. It's great. But really, they're a repressed homosexual, whatever their situation is. They don't see it as the problem. Okay, so one type of problem is where you're not recognizing the problems in your life. You're not recognizing the extent to which you're responsible for them. But the opposite happens too. And that's part of Richard's story, right? Which is that there are people who do get their lives together, who do get motivated, who do take on a more positive attitude or have more ambition, right? They start living a better life, but they attribute it to the drug. They think that it's the drug that made the difference. So same thing with John Venus, right? So it's not just that John Venus convinced himself that veganism was causing his problem, right? He also convinced himself that eating meat cures his problem. Now, obviously, the reality is at least twice he completely stopped lifting weights. He had a recovery period. And then after that, he didn't have this intense joint pain anymore, right? This may be partly psychological, but I've got to tell you something. I've experienced lifting weights. I'm never going to be on that level. I don't want to ever bench press 300 pounds. Ever. I can go to my grave and I never bench press 300 pounds. Or if I have, I did it without paying attention back when I was in Kunming. It's possible I did because I used to slap on more weight and not always count it. But anyway, I think I went up to 270 or something. I forget. But I don't think I ever did 300. But anyway, but my point is I have enough experience with lifting weights to know if you have had an injury and then you give yourself some time off to heal and you recover from the injury and you go back to the gym, you don't do the same things that injured you before. You modify the way you work out, okay? Unless you're a complete idiot, and this guy devotes his life to working out. I am 100% certain that this guy did an analysis of what exercises he's doing and in what order, like how much he warms up for them, and that he changed the way he's working out to avoid joint pain. There's no doubt in my mind, right? But and I believe him when he says now, after twice stopping for many months, having a period of recovery where his tissue damage got to heal, right? And now he finds he's able to work out again without joint pain. Well, there's another explanation for this, right? One, the actual recovery matter. And then two, you started doing something different. You started doing something better. But you're not giving yourself credit for that. You think it's eating a dead cow that solved your problem, okay? People do this with psychological medication all the time, okay? Now, I just say, this is beyond the placebo effect. This is into what I like to call the graven idol effect. So right now, I'm trying to do 200 push-ups a day. I'll be honest, I don't care if it's every second day, Like I don't have to do every day 200 push-ups in terms of how much time I got. But I want 200 push-ups to be my regular thing. And by the way, I have my feet elevated way the hell up. So it's a lot harder than normal push-ups. It's a bigger percentage of your body weight. And I changed the elevation. So that's actually a pretty significant workout in itself. 200 push-ups where you move the feet up and down. And I'm in my mid-40s now, people. Okay. I'm an old man. So that's what I want to do. What if I told you, I was really mopey and I was really distracted with other things. I had these other problems and I wasn't doing the 200 push-ups a day I wanted to do. And then I went to the hardware store and I bought a wooden log. And I bought a paring knife. Started scraping away this log. I whittled the log down into an image of the god Hanuman. And I started worshiping this idol every morning before I went to the gym. I'd wake up, I'd focus my mind, I'd get all pumped up, and I started participating in this religious ceremony, worshiping a block of wood that I've carved into an idol. And then you know what? It's amazing what progress I made in terms of weightlifting, in terms of doing 200 push-ups a day. It's not because of the graven idol. You have the cause and effect the wrong way around. There are people who finally get motivated to quit smoking, quit drinking alcohol, improve their relationship with their wife or their parents, change their career. They get motivated to get their act together and change their lives. And it's no coincidence. At the same time, they start talking to a therapist, and the therapist refers them to a psychiatrist, and they start taking these drugs. And then they're able to say to you, since I started taking this drug, my whole life improved. Everything got better. You got better. You made it better. It wasn't the block of wood. It wasn't the graven idol. Okay? It wasn't the pill. You're giving credit to the pill for changing your life when you changed your life. And it started with you changing your attitude and you getting positively motivated. All right? And dude, it would be the same if instead of a block of wood that's graven into an idol, if instead it's a negative, it's not a worshipful, positive sentiment. It's not a positive, loving emotion. Like you love this God or whatever, the way people love Jesus. You know what? If you bought a doll and you make it into a voodoo doll and you're doing some ritual that's based on hatred, it's based on revenge. Okay. I hate the doll doesn't do anything for you. Okay. The doll doesn't cure your depression. The doll doesn't provide you with motivation, what have you. Okay. It's you. So it's you positively and negatively. And now the other thing, I don't think I have to repeat this. Also, a lot of your problems are not you. A lot of your problems are just the real world. They're not you, and they're also not a biologically real chemical imbalance in your brain that can be cured by a pill, right? Like, oh, you're going to a university. It's a really bad university. It's not you, right? You're in a marriage. It's a really bad marriage. Well, at most, that's 50% of you. You know what I mean? It's not all you. Your parents, maybe your father is an alcoholic. Really simple. Well, it's not you. That's your father. Your father's an alcoholic, and he's making your life miserable. So whether it's your job, your school, whatever, there of course there can be all kinds of things that are not you, but they're also not going to be cured by taking a pill. Not even if it's something as powerful as cocaine. Cocaine totally changes your attitude and motivation. Also kills you. Side effects include death. So I'm reading your comments. Thanks for hitting thumbs up, guys. I do appreciate that. Talk about placebo effect. Even if it's just placebo effect, I appreciate you guys hitting thumbs up. Oh, so that's interesting. So Rasmus used to be a student of psychology at university. Rasmus writes in and says, quote, I've always been super skeptical of antidepressants and the chemical imbalance theory. That's one of the reasons he quit studying psychology. So that's something we talk about here, is whether or not it'd be worthwhile as activists to get into that field. But it would be very depressing to go through the formal education process where you're being taught again and again that antidepressants cure everybody's problems, only to go on to be some kind of critic trying to change the world, trying to help people that way. So Jimbo Smithers asks about Thomas Zaz. So Thomas Zaz is famous for having the hardest name to spell in the history of the world. Yeah, I got to tell you something. I basically hate Thomas Zaz. I think he's an idiot. He's deceased now. He was an idiot. And, he was right about a lot of things. he was also wrong about a lot of things. And, you know, you can hear his philosophy of libertarianism / anarcho-capitalism, what he has to say about freedom and politics and so on. You can hear what he says about other drugs, like what he has to say about heroin and cocaine, recreational addictive drugs. And, you know, I think it's reasonable to come to the conclusion that Thomas Zaz was a complete idiot, but he published really popular, influential books that in dramatic fashion argued against the psychiatric establishment. And there's so much wrong with the psychiatric establishment that even an imbecile like Thomas Zaz can make a big positive difference in the world by pointing the finger and criticizing it. Yeah. So that is what I have to say about Thomas Zaz. And, you know, obviously, by the way, guys, when bad people do good things, I'm happy for them. You know, I think you could say that about John Venus. Like, John Venus is a terrible person, but for a few years, he was doing something positive in the world. He was promoting the vegan diet. Not anymore. But I mean, you can now see intellectually, ethically, emotionally, he's a terrible person. But, you know, if terrible people can do something good, I'm happy for them. So, you know, I do not regard Thomas Zaz as a good person or a good scientist or a good author. But obviously, in as much as he actually did something good, I'm happy for him. Yeah, so TCAT is raising an issue, and it's significant that it hasn't been mentioned already. So we're 55 minutes into the video. TCAT says, quote, 3 common side effects of antidepressants: weight gain, sexual dysfunction, and nausea. So in many of my videos, I just have on screen as text very briefly the lists of the side effects. So, you know, look, scientifically, either you regard these antidepressants as having absolutely zero positive effect and a really significant negative effect. And it's important to say it's not just side effect. There's a negative direct effect apart from side effects, right? Or, you know, when some scientists argue this, and I get it, I've seen that evidence, or you argue that it has this incredibly small benefit, incredibly small positive effect, but really serious negative side effects, and you then hold those in the balance. I think it's important just to point out my argument is not based on side effects, and it's not based on this kind of calculus of balancing the positive against the negative. That's not how I see it. Now, I had a girlfriend many, many years ago, and, you know, I first met her when we were in high school together, and we kissed and so on when we were in high school, but we didn't have sex. We were both virgins at that time. And then we didn't talk for a bunch of years. And then later we got together and we had a real relationship. It's a lot more than kissing going on. Now, this girlfriend of mine was a feminist. And when she was in high school, I can tell you, feminism was a much more negative part of her life than Islam is a negative part of the lives of the majority of Muslims. Far worse. Okay, far worse. Obviously, I'm not making the claim that all feminists are in this ways victims of feminist ideology. Okay, but this girlfriend of mine, and you can imagine, this is her relationship with me was a huge part of her life and her intellectual development, just given all those years that I was a part of her life. And I'm a big influence on everyone in my life. I'm a big influence on my male friends, and I'm completely heterosexual, and they aren't in love with me. You know what I mean? Okay, so I came into her life at one stage in high school. And for her, at that time, feminism was this all-encompassing worldview of hating men and blaming men and seeing everything wrong with the world as being the fault of men. Obviously, she had started thinking about this in a childlike way. She was carrying on with it, developing it as a, you know, as a teenager. And to give it an illustration of how deep this was, you know, her perspective on Christianity at that time, she wasn't an atheist. No. She thought Christianity was good, but the problem was patriarchy. The problem was everything men did within it. She thought there was this like matrifocal, woman-centered version of Christianity that was a wonderful religion. She was into like a feminist regeneration of Christianity. You know, that's really fucking crazy. Okay. And like, this was her perspective on everything in the world. Like, it's one thing to say, oh, blame men. Like, no, like this is like more crazy than anti-Semitism and blaming all the problem in the world on Jewish people. It really was. This was really an incredibly, violent, vindictive ideology she'd bought into. And that was how she lived. And that was how she talked. That was how she perceived the world. She saw men as her enemies in this really authentically crazy way. Now, when she came back into my life, she had completely discarded that worldview and that ideology. And she told me, I only know this from what she told me, she had a period in between where she was in the transition, where she was actually turned on by a lot of kinky sex stuff that was like directly the opposite of feminism. It was like denigrating toward women. She wasn't like that when I was with her. Does not take a degree in psychology to interpret this. This would be like someone who was a Catholic, and then they have a period where they're really turned on by sacrilege or dressing up like a nun or something, you know what I mean? And desecrating the church and what's sacred and holy, what had been saved before. So she, kind of the pendulum swung out the other way. And then, if I had been talking to her back when she was in high school, so whatever, let's say 16, 17, I think we were still 18 in high school in Canada at that time, because the way our system works. I think Americans leave high school before that. 4 years versus 5 years for high school. It's a big difference. She wasn't happy. Of course she wasn't happy, because also she was at heart a very conventional heterosexual woman who wanted to get married and have kids. The reality of who she was and what she wanted was as starkly different from the feminist and lesbian ideology she'd signed up for. It was as starkly different as being a repressed homosexual who's a devout Muslim. It's totally different. I mean, it was irreconcilable. Right. And she even tried. She tried being a lesbian, because it was cool. It was part of her religion. Well, she didn't really have what it took to be a lesbian, but she tried. There's no way you could have talked to her when she was a crazy, mixed up 16-year-old and say to her, look, the reason why you're depressed, the reason why you're unhappy is because of this political ideology you're a part of, and it's ruining your life. If she had gone to talk to a psychiatrist at 16, because she was unhappy. I don't have to tell you everything, but you can imagine she was a very unhappy 16-year-old. If she had gone to talk to a psychiatrist, there is no way any psychiatrist would have talked to this 16-year-old girl and said, well, look, the problem is feminism. Like, the problem is your political ideology. Never. I don't think they would have even asked about that. They probably would have asked, like, how's your relationship with your mother? How's your relationship with your father? They would have probably asked very conventional therapeutic questions, however you want to put it, right? So this is, again, the point about what a detached outsider's perspective is. But sorry, if she had gone to see a psychiatrist, they would have said, oh, you have a wonderful life. Oh, and you've already tried everything to make it better. Oh, you should take this pill. Obviously, you have major depressive disorder, right? Like, there isn't any problem with what you believe. There isn't any problem with your attitude. There isn't any problem even with the decisions you make. She made decisions. I mean, we all do as teenagers. You make decisions that shape your long-term future forever as a teenager. They have terrible long-term knock-on effects, right? In terms of career and everything else, and you're making the wrong decisions because of this crank ideology, right? They would have given her a pill, and that pill can't cure her any more than it can cure you or me or anyone else in this audience. Right? It can't reconcile. It can't reconcile you with your faith, regardless of whether that faith is a conventional religion or, So that's the level of discourse and critique and analysis I'm engaging in here. So from my perspective, it seems almost irrelevant to talk about side effects, but I do have videos talking about that, and the side effects are terrifying. And if you take even the most common antidepressants, you are rolling the dice. You are risking your life. It is totally possible you will get a condition like akathisia. I had videos talking about that. It is totally possible you will be physically disabled for the rest of your life and you will never come back. It is quite possible this will be a life-altering, life-ruining decision that you've made to fuck around with antidepressants. And you know what? Statistically, it is also more likely that they will just do nothing for you, that you will have no perceived benefit and no perceived side effects, even though we know as a fact it is causing you brain damage. That every single day you take the drug, it is causing permanent, irreparable brain damage. It's you never get rid, but you may not be able to perceive it. So all of those are tragic. All of them are. But I'm trying to get at the most fundamental parts of the equation, the most fundamental. The most fundamental question leading to the most fundamental answer. And you know why most people make the wrong choices, because they don't have any of this vocabulary. They've never talked it through with anyone. They don't have anyone who would sit down and talk to them for 1 hour, the way I've been doing this live stream for 1 hour, and talk about their situation, let alone provide them with a whole bunch of other, comparative examples like this. Okay, so the comment from Lazy Baby Chicken, who I haven't heard of before. Welcome to the crowd, Lazy. Lazy Baby Chicken says, quote, I am just glad that vegan gains experience has improved, even if it may be largely placebo. Do you feel that way about eating meat? Do you feel that way about getting on a 100% meat diet? I don't. I don't feel happy for people who quit eating vegetables entirely, eat a 100% meat diet, say they have amazing weight loss and muscle gain, and they feel so much better and their whole life has improved. And they get on the internet and preach about it because they feel better, right? Of course it's a placebo. Of course it's a placebo. Are you fucking kidding me? 100% meat diet will literally kill you. You'll die of scurvy. I mean, it's deadly. It's such a bad diet, right? But all of a sudden you got a lot of fat and a lot of salt and zero fiber in your diet. You feel different. And all these middle-aged people, they think it's a second youth. They found the, what's it called? The fountain of youth. That they, oh, wow. And, whether or not they're using steroids or what have you, I'm not happy for you. You're taking you're getting the placebo effect. I'm not happy for you at all. All right. Some people are awake and some people are asleep. Okay. Now, Vegan Gains has defined his role on the internet as doing scientific research to educate people, right? That's supposed to be the core of who he is and what he does. And he has mysteriously not done the research on this. Now, you can tell me when was the last time he did do research. You may not have noticed, but in his live stream, just before saying that he had tried everything, and thus he had tried taking antidepressants, right? He said he even tried taking mushrooms, hallucinogenic mushrooms, even because he claimed there's scientific research proving that these hallucinogenic mushrooms can cure depression. I've seen the scientific research, Richard. I've done research on this. Okay. I mean, the extent to which this is self-deception cannot be exaggerated. This is just as ridiculous as a Christian telling you that prayer cures cancer. Okay, cancer sometimes does go into remission, and cancer sometimes goes into spontaneous remission. Okay, whoever you are, I'm not happy for you. I'm not happy for you because you had the placebo effect. If you were praying and then your cancer went into remission, okay, no. Telling people that prayer cured your cancer or that a specific saint in the Catholic Church cured your cancer because you prayed to them, it's bad and evil and wrong. Okay? If you're a middle-aged person and you're tired of being kind of pot-bellied and out of shape, and you decide to change your life, you're going to exercise more, you're going to have a second youth, you're going to get motivated, maybe you're going to start cheating on your wife again, you're going to have a better sex life or something. This is what's going on with a lot of these guys. The fact that you started eating a carnivore diet or what are they called? The Stone Age diet, the caveman diet, one of these, the fact that you started doing one of these meat-heavy diets, okay, that's not the cause of the improvement you've experienced. It's not. And I'm not happy for you to go around attributing the change in your life, which, again, you may have changed a lot of things. You may have started counting calories so you lose weight. You may have started going to the gym. You may have started cheating on your wife, et cetera, et cetera. Right? There are all these things you've changed. You also just changed your attitude. You decided you wanted to make a change in your life. Like that in itself, you decided you wanted to make a big dramatic change. That's much more important than the fact that you're now eating meat 3 times a day. You're eating steak 3 meals a day because you signed on the so-called caveman diet. You decided you wanted to be a caveman. You got this idea in your head. These things you're like, no, I'm not going to come out here. And, encourage people to ruin their lives by trying to imitate, these idols on the internet who are reporting the placebo effect as if it were a medically real, scientifically real benefit, whether that's from diet or drug. That is bad and evil and wrong. And guys, just notice, I'm a vegan, but I am not even claiming you can't improve your life while you switch to 100% meat diet. People do it all the time. Okay. And really, like, the evidence is real. Okay. But guess what? People have a midlife crisis and they start doing cocaine. They start doing cocaine and going to nightclubs. And I don't endorse that either. Okay. I'm here to tell you what's right and what's wrong. Okay. If you want to change your life, say the same thing about converting to Islam. Okay, you can totally change your life around because you had a midlife crisis and you converted to Islam. And among other things, you quit drinking alcohol when you converted. Islam is totally against drinking alcohol, in case you didn't know. I can totally see how someone can come on and give a testimony about how they were depressed and their life was miserable, and then they converted to this new religion and everything got better. Guess what? Islam is still bad and evil and wrong. Okay? So no, I'm not out here saying I'm happy for anyone who feels they've improved their life, who feels that they're doing better because of the placebo effect. I think that's a tremendously dangerous thing in all these areas, including politics, including feminism. Something as seemingly harmless as feminism does indeed ruin people's lives. Right. And I am reading your comments as coming, guys. But let's also question another thing. The first sentence from Lazy Baby Chicken, quote, "I am just glad that Vegan Gains' experience has improved." What's improved? What has improved? Okay, I'm just being real with you. I think when he started eating a vegan diet, nothing improved. He claimed he was miraculously cured. He'd solved all his psychological problems by switching to a vegan diet. He no longer had depression. He no longer had hallucinations. He no longer had all these psychological problems. Oh, and then guess what? A few months later, he admitted it didn't work. He had this period of time where he said that taking hallucinogenic mushrooms had totally cured him, had totally changed his life, had totally solved his psychological problems. Okay. It's not true. This is someone who lies about his health outcomes, mental health outcomes, and physical health outcomes again and again and again. He lied about having a vasectomy, right? He did have a vasectomy. He lied about what the actual outcomes were. He had terrible side effects. He had terrible, debilitating pain and awful side effects. And he's permanently scarred by it. He's a very visible scar now for the rest of his life. It really had a tremendously negative impact on his life for at least 1 year, but I think it was more like 2 years or 3 years. He had all these terrible side effects from it. There's still videos on the internet where he's saying it's the most wonderful thing. Everyone should sign up to do it. So look, guys, okay, I feel like, so this will be kind of a brief digression, but it's not that much of a digression. You'll see it's right on topic. I got fan mail from a member of the audience. I'm going to read it to you. Okay, so a viewer wrote in. I'm going to leave this viewer anonymous for obvious reasons. He says, quote, "Dear Mr. Mazard, I've been watching your channel for years. I, too, have questioned your motives at times. I had thought you enjoyed condemning people for their weaknesses, but now I think that was unfair. When you described your struggles and setbacks in being on YouTube in Taoism and Daniel," so that's a great video, by the way. It's a couple days ago, but there's a video called Taoism and Daniel. I think it's one of the best videos on my channel. Anyway, so the fan says, "When you describe your struggles and setbacks induced by being on YouTube in Taoism and Daniel, it finally struck home that you were a real person, i.e. not just a face on the internet, who has real and positive motivations. Why else would you endure these years of abuse? Period. Life on the internet has made me cynical. Period. My judgment was unjust." So I can read more of this. But at this point, one of the things I want to kind of encourage you to think about is this. Why am I criticizing Richard? Why are we talking about this? What are my motivations? Right? And what are his motivations? Okay. I think that people who don't have good motivations to help others have a great deal of difficulty in recognizing it when other people demonstrate it, right? I talked a lot, this is maybe 2 years ago, I talked a lot about humanitarian work and saying to Richard directly, you should do humanitarian work. You should actually get out and help people. Okay. Now, some people could misinterpret that the same way this fan says that in the past he used to misinterpret. You could misinterpret that as just being, oh, this guy, Eisel Mazard, he is just showing that he's morally superior to Vegan Gains, to Richard, that he's just looking down his nose and saying, oh, you're not morally pure like me because I do humanitarian work and you don't, or you should be more like, you can misinterpret it that way, right? But again, if you actually go back and watch those videos, or you just listen to me say it now, no, I'm actually making this recommendation for Richard's benefit. I'm really saying you can be a better person. You can be happier in your own life. You can have a more meaningful life. You will benefit by doing this humanitarian work. Even if the people you went out to try to help, like let's say you go to the border of Syria now with the Syrian civil war, even if they don't benefit, or even if you have an incredibly tiny, positive effect on the world, like you manage to feed a couple starving people, but that's about it. And, this is years of your life that go into it. Okay. So like, again, it's easy to misread it. And I know, because Richard wrote to me at that time, he probably talked about it in a live stream and I didn't hear it, but I know he wrote to me. Richard responded that 100% negatively, as if it's just me trying to pwn him, as if it's me just trying to insult him or snub him or something. And he wrote back to me all angry. He wrote back to me talking about the size of my penis, natural source of envy in his case, talking about saying, oh, well, you think you're morally superior to me. No, I don't see you going and helping, people, refugees in Syria or something, right? Okay, it may be hard for you to understand from the outside, right? But I mean that suggestion really sincerely, really positively. Now, I have other experiences in life, right? I spent many, many years in a university and at different universities. So because of my ex-wife, I spent a lot of time at Cambridge, University of England, and Oxford. There's a bus that links them. I have never said, and I never would say to Richard, Richard, what you really need to turn your life around is to go and study at Cambridge, University of England. It would be great for you. It would really, because I don't believe that. Okay. Now, I think Richard could. I think Richard would be more depressed. I think his life would be worse if he kind of got his paperwork together and got his money together and went and enrolled to study any of the subjects I'm familiar with at Cambridge University, England. That's sincere. Okay. Obviously, any of you in the audience could say, well, look, currently the guy just spends his time doing hardcore porn and playing video games on the internet. Come on, isn't it an improvement for him to go to Cambridge University, England? Totally reasonable perspective. He probably has people in his life saying that. They say, look, why don't you take your money and your fame and go to Cambridge University, England? Why don't you go to some university, start studying something, start learning something, okay? I'm telling you, in terms of my experience in life and my knowledge of Richard as a person, I can't say that. That would be insincere for me to say, hey, dude, this is the cure for your depression. This is how you can live a more meaningful life, okay? But what I can say about Richard, and from my perspective, this guy does not even have like a high school level education. I'm not claiming he didn't go to high school. I'm claiming he didn't really learn what you're supposed to have learned while you were in high school. This guy has a very, very low level of education. I can say to you sincerely, okay, Richard, this is the kind of guy you are. These are the advantages and disadvantages you have in life. I'm saying for you, sincerely, you can turn your life around. If right now you roll up your sleeves and start getting involved in humanitarian work, if you really seriously and selflessly start helping other people, including other people who hate you and who will never thank you for it. Okay, like including people where you help them and in return they swear at you and spit at you. Even that experience, like I really believe, Richard, that you can improve your life, and let's say it, you can never be depressed again. You can really profoundly change your life forever. You can have a series of meaningful experiences and you can learn and you can grow as a person by getting out and doing humanitarian work and learning a new language and studying a new culture and struggling to respect people and struggling to have them respect you and immersing yourself in real life and real political problems as they unfold and living at this much higher level of engagement. All right. Vegan Gain says he had to take this pill because he tried everything and nothing worked. Well, Richard, you didn't try that. Richard, you say you're so proud that you can just sit and play video games to earn a living. And you know, if I was doing that, I would want to kill myself. Okay? You're living a life that's not fit for a human being. And you think you're so goddamn happy doing it. The same way a repressed homosexual who's a devout Muslim thinks that his religion makes him happy, when in fact, his religion is making him miserable. The same way my ex-girlfriend, who was a crazy feminist extremist, thought feminism was the most powerful, positive thing in her life. She thought it was the greatest thing. And that was what was making her depressed. It was what was ruining her life. But she thought it was the best thing in her life. Richard, you say you've tried everything, okay? But you never tried quitting video games. You never tried doing humanitarian work. You never even tried setting yourself a schedule to read 2 books a month and come on YouTube and do book reviews. Like, you never challenged yourself to grow intellectually, to set aside childish things, to stop playing with dolls, to stop playing with action figures, to stop playing with video games and start to take on some truly adult responsibilities, challenges, aspirations, ambitions, and then to get the kind of gratification that comes not just with success, but failure, okay, when you're pursuing those ambitions. You're someone who hasn't grown because you never took on those higher ambitions. It's completely obvious to any detached outsider why you're miserable. And it's not obvious to you because you're too close to it. I do see your questions and comments as they come in, people. Okay, I'll digress on this just a moment. So someone in the audience called Eliza says, quote, reducing regular alcohol consumption has had a huge impact in helping her feel less depressed over the last year, close quote. Okay. So just to come back to it very, very briefly, Richard claims that he's read scientific research about the effects of hallucinogenic mushrooms. Now, I can tell, Richard, if you read it, you didn't understand it. Like, you don't, like, it's possible. There's a lot of bullshit peer-reviewed studies about all these drugs, and they're written by people who are highly motivated to lie or to present their research in the most flattering way imaginable. Okay, what actually is the effect of alcohol on the brain? In the scientific use of the term, it's called a depressant. Okay, it's a depressant for both the brain and the central nervous system, the whole nervous system, not even your fingers and toes, has a depressant effect on your neurons and axons throughout your whole body, including your brain. What actually is the effect of these hallucinogenic mushrooms on serotonin, Richard? Seeing as you believe in the fundamental theory behind SSRIs and SNRI drugs, you know, it's the same theory. It's the monoamine reuptake inhibitor theory, which is the same theory. How could both of these theories be true? How could it be true that you believe in the scientific research pointing to the specific effect that those hallucinogenic mushrooms have on serotonin, and you also believe in this theory about SSRIs and SNRIs? But you guys know most people do not think these things through this way. They don't reason them through at all. And I think Richard has been honest in stating the emotional reasoning he did. He said, oh, well, I've tried everything and nothing works. And he convinces himself out of desperation to try this thing that on some level he's aware doesn't work. He's evidently seen enough research showing that it doesn't work. Babe, do you want to jump in? So Melissa's been reading about this quite a lot lately. I mean, you could say something totally, at this point, you can say something totally out of left field. But I mean, you've done a lot of reading about it.
One thing I can say is it's a dangerous decision to start taking antidepressants. The book that I've been reading, research shows that it makes you more prone to depression in the future. if you stop taking the antidepressant, you're more likely to become depressed and start the antidepressant again. And then it gets to a point quickly where psychiatrists tell you to not stop taking them, to
never discontinue,
to continue taking them forever.
Yeah.
And that's what is concerning, that it's becoming something that people do forever.
Yeah.
It's a forever drug that every day you're taking. And what other
a permanent disability, you might say. Go on.
Oh yeah. What other psychological substance that you take? Would you be okay with every day that having an impact on your brain?
Yeah.
Would you be okay with taking magic mushrooms every day?
Yeah. Hey guys, I just got good news in the mail. I got research funding for this project I've had in mind for a while. I didn't tell you about this, but I filled out the application. I sent it into the Canadian government, and I'm going to do a research project on the effects of psychoactive substances. It's going to be great. We've got cooperation from the American military, and what they're going to do is they're going to take a bunch of new recruits, and they're going to divide them into two groups. And these recruits, they're all the same age, and they're pair matched, same height, same ethnicity. We got two groups of men who've just come into the Army, just gone through basic training. And 50% of them are going to be put in a base where they drink caffeine every day. Every day, first thing in the morning, they have a cup of coffee, and then they're free to drink as much or as little caffeine throughout the rest of the day as they want to. So minimum 1 cup of coffee a day. And then the other group of recruits, absolutely zero caffeine and zero alcohol, zero mind altering drugs, no other confounding variables whatsoever while they're on this base. And we're going to see who gets better results. We're going to study in depth the performance indicators for these men. And here's the best part of all. We're not just doing this on an Army base where they're training them to be snipers or pilots. We're doing this with the Defense Language Institute. So these guys are doing some physical training. They're learning to run up and down stairs and climb a hill and shoot a gun, but they're also learning a foreign language. So a lot of them are studying Arabic. You can understand why in terms of current American wars and what have you. But they're learning. So we're going to be able to study in detail who learns a language faster, who's in better shape physically. We're going to survey a whole range of indicators. We're going to examine who would do better if you had two groups of soldiers, one group of whom are drinking coffee first thing in the morning every day, and the other has zero caffeine. Wouldn't that be fascinating? Doesn't that sound really rewarding and interesting? Because, we're all familiar with caffeine as a drug. We all know it has some advantages and disadvantages. And we think about our own lives. Which would really be better for me if I'd signed up to the Army? In some ways, right, I'd have an advantage, whether it's working out at the gym or studying language at the textbook if I want caffeine. But in some ways, there's really an advantage. Like how well you sleep, and then how that affects other things. Gee, I really don't know. Oh, sorry, I meant magic mushrooms. I meant we're going to have one Army unit who every single day gets high on magic mushrooms and is hallucinating, and another Army unit which is sober. Which one do you think is going to have better outcomes or better results? Are you fucking kidding me? There's no question. All right. Caffeine has some positive benefits, right? And there are also negative side effects. Caffeine is a drug that we tolerate in our society for this reason. And I think the negative side effects are serious to caffeine. I do. Okay, I do. If you actually believe that SSRI antidepressant drugs have a benefit, a real benefit, or if you believe that SNRI antidepressant drugs have a real benefit, or Wellbutrin, or Xanax. Xanax is not a SSRI, but I'm just saying any of these other classifications of drugs, benzodiazepines, Haldol, any of these psych meds, okay? If you believe there's a real benefit, that means that you believe that if we do this experiment with two groups of soldiers going into the military, and one group is taking Haldol every day, or one group is taking Prozac every single day they're starting their day with a dose of this mind-altering drug, that you think they would perform better. They would perform better than the soldiers that are clean and sober. Okay? Nobody believes that. With all this excuse making and all these digressions and distractions from the really important questions of how to be happy, how to lead a meaningful life, we're kind of circumambulating the big issue of what is it you really believe the positive effects of this drug are. What is it you think you're going to benefit? Because I'm willing to admit caffeine has positive benefits. I would be willing to admit Adderall has positive benefits, right? If you have two groups of soldiers, and one of them is getting high on Adderall every day, and the other is clean and sober, I'm not sure who would learn more Chinese in 6 months, who would learn more Arabic in 6 months. I'm not sure who would do better in terms of physical conditioning, weightlifting, right? Some of those stimulant drugs, they have benefits. There are also really serious negative side effects, right? But I can admit that. I can say there are trade-offs here. And if we do that research, I'm not sure what we're going to find. I would assume, by the way, if you're really doing it in depth, you're going to find that certain types of personalities perform better with caffeine. Certain types of personalities maybe excel when given Adderall, and others do terribly. That there will be some people who are like, look, this Adderall is driving me crazy. Like they can't cope with it, the effects at all. There's some people who respond really negatively even to caffeine, even though most people use caffeine in our society. There's some people from the effects are too negative, or the effect on their sleep is too negative. The effect on their emotions is too negative. They can't handle taking caffeine at all. Okay, but nobody believes that if you split up these two groups of super soldiers and you put one of them on antidepressants, that they are going to be better soldiers, that they are somehow going to outperform their competition. And looking at your own life, nobody really believes that this is giving you a benefit where if you could split those two paths, that you really would have performed better in this sense. Nobody believes, to put it this way, that antidepressants are a performance-enhancing drug. And isn't that the greatest irony of all? That Richard Vegan Gaines, someone who became famous by researching and criticizing the minutiae of performance-enhancing drugs that really work. Okay, make no mistake, Anavar works. Okay, steroids work. All right, don't do them. I'm morally opposed to it. I think they should be illegal. Okay, they work. This guy built his reputation on supposedly presenting a scientifically enlightened perspective on performance-enhancing drugs. And now he's addicted to a drug that is in no way performance-enhancing. And guys, the excuses you make are much harder to quit than the drug itself. I'm going to keep reading this fan mail. So if you weren't here, I'm continuing to read a letter from an appreciative member of the audience. And he says, quote, "You are one of the only people I know of who can offer a sincere and unique perspective on almost any social or political issue. For example," and this is a funny example, but it's an interesting one. "For example, your take on the purpose of museums, that they offer a unique chance to challenge dominant regional narratives, as in Detroit, was shocking to me. All my life, it had seemed natural, normal, and inevitable that museums were recreational cheerleading centers with a veneer of science, that they were merely celebratory. To challenge something so fundamental has made me take the functions of my society less for granted. I do not know where else I might have learned this. Similarly, your take that shyness can be an expression of shame has prompted me to rethink my occasionally debilitating shyness and deep sense of shame at being someone with normal thoughts and wants." So he's recognizing the extent to which his own desires are normal and are not this special character trait called shyness. This also relates to depression, to what extent you have normal desires and normal problems, and normal disappointments. Okay, I continue the quote. Quote, it did feel like your advice was more directed at trolls than the ordinary shy people, though. those who are well-meaning but reticent. This advice has been uncomfortable but valuable. You know what I keep saying, you guys, get uncomfortable. Oh, this of course. He said, so his final paragraph, he says, your honesty, sincerity, and level of research make your channel by some margin the most unique channel that I watch on YouTube. While I do not watch as much as I used to, I admire your ability to offer something uniquely, distinctly you. It takes courage, and I am grateful for your efforts. Okay, so now I want to go back to the very first paragraph, right, and what he said there briefly. He said he's watched the channel for years, and he has questioned my motives at times because he had thought that I enjoy condemning people for their weaknesses. Right? Now, I'm just being real with you. So we have 48 people in the audience now. Hit thumbs up if you have a second. Helps more people discover the video. Okay. If this is the only time you've heard me talk in your life, this is the first video you've ever seen, does anyone think that I am enjoying condemning Richard for his weaknesses, that I'm enjoying condemning vegan cancer? Do you think that's what's going on for me psychologically or internally? There have been other people who come up. I'm not enjoying condemning John Venus. I'm not enjoying condemning Nina and Randa, right? So just saying, this guy, for whatever reason, he was interpreting my videos as if they're presented in this mean-spirited way. And I got into saying, look, to some extent, someone like Richard himself, he can't recognize my good intentions when I'm demonstrating them. Like Richard, when I'm talking to you about humanitarian work, when I'm talking about the importance of reading and of really challenging yourself to read things you're not already a self-appointed expert in, where you're out of your own comfort zone, getting uncomfortable and learning new things and growing. The stuff I'm talking to you about, Richard, that's not me being cruel to you. That's not me enjoying snubbing you or being mean to you. Of course, it's hard for him to see because that's what he does. What he does is he enjoys snubbing people. He enjoys being mean to people. He enjoys being cruel to people, insulting and denigrating to people. I mean, okay, that's not what's going on here. That's not what I enjoy. Yes, I'm partly sincerely trying to help you. Obviously, that's incredibly unlikely to work. The reality is I'm sincerely trying to help people in the audience who may have some of the same problems you have. And even this piece of fan mail and even comments from the audience during this live stream show, it does help people. So I am helping people, and I'm motivated to help people. I'm just going to react to the phrasing of that, okay? He says, I thought you enjoyed condemning people for their weaknesses. Doesn't that describe Richard perfectly? Like, Richard, what makes you happy? You really seem to be happy when you're condemning people for their weaknesses. You don't seem to be happy when you're helping anyone else ever. You don't have a charitable bone in your body. You know what I mean? Well, I'll ask you this question, and I'll close the video. You know, this is not an easy question for people to answer, okay? What is it that makes you happy? When are you happy? When can you say, doing this makes me happy? And can it change? You guys didn't know me during the years of my life, but there was absolutely a big chunk of my life where my answer to the question of what makes you happy would be research. I absolutely thought of the happiest thing in my life, not necessarily the most meaningful or the most important, as research, you know, and even in that context, like Cambridge, England, and Oxford, England, you know, you met all these people. They were behaving like models and actresses in Hollywood or something. They're behaving like this is a popularity contest and this is about who's sleeping with who and who's getting nepotism from who. They were behaving like no talent models and actresses, people who weren't trying to get ahead on the merit of their work. There was all this skullduggery at Cambridge and Oxford, really. And, you know, I'm meeting people and talking about, look, bro, I'm about this research. Like this, like, what are you here for? Like, this is, you know, and like, really, like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You know what I mean? Like, so there's a huge gap, and you felt it every day, alienating you from other people that way. It's like, what? And I got to say, it was really weird, specifically in Cambodia, when I was in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. So you guys know I've lived in many countries in many different situations, but it was most striking when I went to events in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. And there were these other people who were doing charity work. They were attached to humanitarian work, charity work. And there were other people attached to research, specifically research foundations, research positions, research jobs. I also saw this in Vientiane, the capital city of Laos. I've seen this in other places, but it was really, really striking in Cambodia. And it's like, bruh, you're here to fuck whores. Like, literally, that's what they're here for. There were people who were in it for the money, and there were people who were in it for the sex. And like, sometimes the sex is as simple as prostitution. Sometimes it's more complicated. Oh, Jesus, could I ever tell stories? Holy shit. And there were people who were in it for the ego trip. Like, oh, there are all these perverse, motives. And it's like, bruh, like, I'm here for the research. And I'm here to actually help people. And these kinds of conversations come up again and again. Be like, dude, like, if I were motivated by my sex life, why would I be in Cambodia? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, this just makes no sense to me. Like, what? Like, you're running an orphanage for your sex life? And dude, that is not a fucking exaggeration. It gets dark, okay? There are Catholic foundations and there are Protestant. There are people doing humanitarian work with dark motives. But even when it's the foundations that are like handing out sacks of rice to starving people, that are doing, starvation-related food security, food insecurity work and stuff, like, dude, this is what you're about. This is what motivates you. Like, I'm here for this research, and I'm actually here to make the world a better place, which includes the research to some extent, right? Like these are my motives. And like even the money thing, like, we're sitting here. You want to talk to me about money? Like, I could be working in real estate. I could be working in real estate in Toronto, Canada, at that time, one of the hottest, fastest growing real estate markets. And I knew one guy who worked the stock market in Toronto, but I could be playing the stock market in Toronto under 6 different headings. I can be flipping tech stocks during the tech boom. Like, you're about money? Okay. What is it you enjoy doing? Okay. So I'm telling you, for I don't know what it was, 10 years of my life. Let's just say 10 years to make it a round number. Okay. There's 10 years of my life where I could describe that this is what I enjoyed. This is what made me happy. This is what my life was kind of most centrally about. And then the bizarre contrasts I had to other people. It's like, I can't believe you're here in this same place, in the same time, in the same line of work with me, and your motivations are so totally alien from mine, right? But it changed, okay? It can change, and I would even go further and say it must change. You won't stay the same. You keep growing, even if you don't try, even if you don't want to, even if you want to stay the same, okay? What was meaningful to you at 16, it's not going to be the same at 26, and it's not going to be the same at 36, and it's not going to be the same at 46. Most people completely assume that they stop changing after they finish university or something, maybe 22, maybe 25 or something. Like, oh, and now I'm just going to be the same person forever. Wrong. The shit you thought was meaningful, the shit you enjoyed at 25, you can't enjoy anymore at 35. That goes for your job. That goes for your intellectual life, the life of your mind. Guess what? Bad news. Might go for your marriage. You don't enjoy fucking the same person anymore. You don't enjoy making excuses for that person anymore. You don't enjoy helping them and being involved in their life anymore. You thought they were profound before. Now you think they're fucking shallow. They used to make you happy. Now they make you miserable. It's tragic. A lot of people get married at 25 and get divorced at 35. Okay? It's tragic. A lot of people commit to being a dentist. They think they're going to be so fucking happy for the rest of their life being a dentist, and it's positive, and they help people, and they make a lot of money. And guess what? After you've been doing it for 10 years, you're 35, and you'd rather fucking chew your arm off to get out of this bear trap. You'll do anything to get out of dentistry. You've got to change. All right? And you didn't want to change, but you changed. What you enjoy, right? What makes you happy changed. Okay? Research doesn't mean to me what it used to anymore. Okay? Humanitarian work doesn't mean to me what it used to. Charity work doesn't mean to me what it used to. Writing books, publishing doesn't mean to me what it used to more. Going to university, studying, writing essays for some old man who grades them doesn't mean to me what it used to anymore. Okay? I didn't choose that. I didn't choose to change. I changed. And I'm 100% confident the person I am today is a better person than the one I was 10 years ago and 20 years ago. Richard, you can't be so certain. Okay, Richard, you're a worse person now than you were 10 years ago. But here's the fucking hook, Richard. You think playing with dolls can make you happy. You think playing with action figures can make you happy. You think reading comic books can make you happy. I was a kid once too. Okay, I read comic books when I was a child. I played with wooden blocks when I was a child. Okay, and wooden blocks just can't be for me what they once were. Okay. And there are guys who worked so hard to play baseball at like an elite level. And Richard used to do that with hockey, right? And then you get to a certain age and a certain stage in life, and baseball can't be for you what it once was. The wooden blocks can't be for you. The playing with dolls or action figures, reading comic books, it can't be for you what it once was. You can't be that stupid anymore, not even if you want to be. Okay? Richard, playing video games can't be for you what it once was. If it ever made you happy, it's before I knew you. And I can look, maybe when you were 16, maybe when you were 14, maybe when you were 12. There was some point in your life at which playing video games made you happy, okay? And it's over. And the tragedy is you don't know it yet. And you've convinced yourself that you have a medical condition that's never existed, that there's no scientific proof for, there's no test for. You've convinced yourself that there's something biologically wrong with you, the same way that someone who has diabetes, someone who is a diabetic, has something biologically wrong with them, and it can be cured with a pill. And you think you've tried everything, but you've tried nothing. You haven't quit video games. You haven't done humanitarian work. You haven't even started reading fucking books. You haven't started educating yourself. You didn't decide to go back to school. You didn't decide to get a profession or a career. You didn't even try fucking a different woman, Richard. Okay? You didn't even try cheating on your wife. All right? And I hate to say this, from a detached outsider's perspective, you can keep telling yourself you have a happy marriage. Okay? If I were in that marriage, I'd want to kill myself, Richard. And there are a whole lot of people in the audience, whether or not they're confident enough being honest to your face, there are a whole lot of people who can look at your life and say, if I were living your life, I'd want to kill myself. Every aspect of it, including your body dysmorphia obsession, obsessively working out and trying to be super thin and then trying to be super heavy and all this stuff. Dude, that looks like a fucking miserable life. Every aspect of it, but including the fact that you are still clinging to things from your childhood that once made you happy, and you don't even realize that they can't do that for you anymore. Okay? What about this, Richard? What if it's not just video games, and it's not just action figures, and it's not just comic books, and it's not just pornography? Okay. Do you have any idea what an impact pornography had on me when I was 13? Wow! Well, what effect do you think it has on me today? The difference for me between seeing a woman with her clothes on and her clothes off is like nothing today. Okay? When you are a 13-year-old male, woo! Like, dude, your endorphins. It's so exciting to see pornography. Okay? Something like that also happens with video games, right? With a lot of these things. Like maybe when you were 13 or maybe when you were 11 or something, maybe you have to go earlier with that video. There was a time when this was thrilling. This was amazing. There's a time when pornography is amazing. That's over for you, Richard. Pornography is never going to be for you what it was. Video games, never going to be for you what it was. Action figure, comic books. What about this thing I just quoted from this fan mail? Okay. What about condemning people for their weaknesses? What about being mean to people, bullying people, intimidating people, hurting people? What if 5 years ago that made you happy and now it can't anymore? Not even if you want it to. What if there's no pill on any doctor's shelf anywhere that can help you enjoy the things that made you happy just 5 years ago, because you've changed. What do you want to do, Richard? Do you want to go crawling back to your blankie? You want to play with wooden blocks and the little comfort blanket you had as a child? Do you want to go back to playing ice hockey? Huh? You want to go on being a trash-talking bodybuilder forever? You want to play Call of Duty, Modern Warfare till you're 50, never grow up, never take on new responsibilities, new challenges, new horizons? Huh? Or do you want to recognize the extent to which you've changed, stop looking backwards, start looking forward, and embrace the extent to which now you've got to change even more?